The Jacob Wilson.
The Jacob Wilson.
We've had some imposter Jacob Wilsons before. This is the Jacob Wilson.
Yeah, Jacob is currently a student in Vancouver and finished exactly 100th at the last Pro Tour, piloting this same Esper control deck. So no stranger to the game. Both players are going to start off on tapped lands, and we see a main deck Thoughtseize from Jacob.
One of the choices that some people like, some people don't. And we see another one, Merciless Eviction in David Cummins' hand.
Yeah, so David's hand looks like it'd be a lot of board control with an Elspeth. It's pretty, the Elspeth really is the card here that I imagine Jacob takes. I'm not positive.
I would imagine so. Like Hero's Downfall and Detention Sphere are like the same. Supreme Verdict and Merciless Eviction are kind of the same.
Yeah, it's worth noting David didn't have any blue in his opening hand there. It was a pair of Black-White Temples and a basic, but does not have any blue yet.
Scrylands lead to greedy keeps.
Yeah.
It's fine, I'll just scry.
But looks like he drew an island there, or he had an island scryed to the top.
Scrying this one at the bottom, passing the turn back to Jacob.
Both players are setting up in the early game. For reference on their deck list as to what each player has at their disposal, David's deck has a lot more Planeswalkers. He's on 9 main deck Planeswalkers, so 3 Ashiok, 2 Elspeth, 4 Jace,
yep,
and the 1 Aetherling. Jacob's deck has a lot more removal in the main deck. He does have the 2 Elspeths, but he has no Ashioks. Instead, he's playing Thoughtseizes and a couple more spot removal spells. He does have an Archangel of Thune as his finisher, in addition to the Aetherling, but I would say he's probably a little bit disadvantaged for this game 1.
Yeah, Archangel definitely not where you want to be in the control mirror. Ashiok, it's kind of like Ashiok versus Thoughtseizes, I would say. And Jacob has a couple more dead cards.
Yeah, so Jacob and I actually, we were on the same team for the last Pro Tour, and so I talked to him a bit about his deck. That the Archangel is a card he's trying out at this tournament today. He, at the PT, was playing Prognostic Sphinx in that slot.
Okay.
Basically, they want just a 5-drop. They're going for a 5-drop creature other than Blood Baron.
Sure. Something to impact the board.
Right.
Proactively, it makes sense. See another Thoughtseize from Jacob, seeing basically the same hand.
Yeah, Cummins has drawn a replacement Elspeth for the one Jacob took, so he will take it again.
How convenient.
And continues to develop his mana base.
So now David is threat light and removal heavy.
So you were talking before about how there's a beginning game, a mid game, and a late game to these control mirrors. Both players really have just land go'd, and there's been 2 Thoughtseizes. Have we entered the late game yet?
I would say that the Elspeth coming down is the indicator that we are officially into the beginning stages of the end game. Like, the middle turns are sort of like Jace battles and jockeying for position and making land drops, cycling and divination and all that. But once Elspeth start flying, the 6th and 7th land drops are being made. That's end game status.
Yeah, so David immediately Heroes Downfalls the Elspeth, then plays Jason. He actually pluses it up to 5.
Yeah, he's trying to, protect it from the Elspeth tokens. But all that's really going to do in this matchup is make it so that you don't get your 1 activation.
Right. So you would have been a proponent of him then playing maybe the Supreme Verdict or the Tension Sphere there?
Yeah. Or if you're going to play Jace, just minus it and throw it away.
Well,
get your value.
He'll have a second shot at it as he drew another Jace, and he's going to go ahead and run that second Jace out. Still hasn't taken care of the tokens, and he's going to plus it again.
Well, this is another way that you can do it. You can try and run Jacob out of answers to the Jace. There are a lot in the deck, but, only so many.
Jacob's going to fish for one. He plays Azorius Charm, cycles it, and it looks like the Jace is going to stand.
All right.
So that leaves David the opportunity here to verdict and minus the Jace. Of note, David does not have any lands. He actually pluses the Jace again there. And Jacob is now baiting. Jacob has drawn the Detention Sphere for the Jace, but looks like he's baiting right now, or he has a Sphinx's Revelation.
Well, I'm interested to see what David's plan is with this Jace.
He's plussing up. It looks like he's going to try to ultimate.
He's going to try to ultimate it, and Jacob Wilson fires off a huge rev for 6. Yes. That is the card you want to draw in this situation.
And it is going to resolve. So Jacob drawing 6 cards. Almost more important than the fact that he hasn't drawn cards off this Jace is that David is very far behind on lands now.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that, the Jace advantage gets you, is you get deeper into your deck, you make more land drops, you have more shots towards Rev, but if you're just plussing it, you're just waiting for it to go ultimate, and then you can get your value out of it. You do see Detention Sphere on the Jace, so...
Yeah, and I really like how Jacob played that. He had the Detention Sphere. He really didn't see the Jace as a threat until it was up to 7.
Yeah.
And so he waited until he had a full hand. Like, he wanted to push his land advantage as hard as he could before he tried to answer it, so he'd have more lands, more counterspells, more everything when he went for that.
Yeah, I think if there was an indication that David was going to minus the Jace, Jacob actually might have played it differently, but there was no sign of that.
Once David goes up
down
to 6 with the Jace, I think it's really
going
clear.
all the way.
Yeah.
Yep. And Jacob did figure that out and realized that he could sequence a little more favorably by starting with the Revelation. And the Supreme Verdict does clear the board, but Jacob with a hand full of cards and way more lands.
Yeah. And we see another. Remember, David has a lot more threats in his main, as we see another one of those as he's drawn Ashiok Nightmare Weaver. I can't imagine it will stick on the board if he plays it.
Yeah.
Jacob has. You see, Jacob actually has another Revelation in hand, so he.
Oh.
Yeah, he has a lot of cards at his disposal right now.
You get that old hand library where you just have this brick of cards in your hand.
Yeah, so Revelations is so important game 1 when both players are really counter-light. I really feel like the matchup changes once you get past game 1, because then suddenly you can't count on your Revelations resolving. Because you see here, Jacob has 2 counter spells in his main deck. He has 1 Syncopate and 1 Dissolve. David doesn't
like
2 dissolve. So it's not, you can pretty much run your spells out there. And Jacob's going to do just that. This Revelation is going to hit for 8.
It's a lot of cards. You have to have a special avatar to start with that many.
So full hand here. And he almost certainly will have a way to deal with Ashiok.
Yes. Now he just has to figure out how he wants to sequence this, how he wants to close out the game, how he wants to protect himself from, potential ways that he could lose.
Exactly. It looks like he has an Elspeth, so he has a win con in there.
All right. He's got a couple options this time.
Yes. So he's gonna start by
we'll get a little more information. I like it.
And we're gonna see at 4 mana, we're going to see his own Jace.
All right.
And now Jacob's going to start the game of plussing Jace.
Well, he has so many cards. David's under so much pressure. His plussing Jace is, he doesn't need more cards at this point. He just needs
he needs to win.
Yes.
And he's going to go ahead and go to end step, discarding a bunch of lands, hanging on to an Azorius Charm, a pair of Supreme Verdicts, and an Elspeth, amongst other things.
David, right at the top is a good sign.
David actually has a number of ways to deal with the Jace. He has a Downfall, a Detention Sphere, and a Merciless Eviction. Last card he has is Far Away, so he has plenty of answers, but he's very far behind on lands.
Yes.
He's
getting enchantments.
Merciless Eviction on enchantments. He wants his own Jace. And Jacob may let that resolve if he has the counterspell for it. I think he's going to go ahead and let this resolve.
Which one do you keep?
Yeah, one of them has to go away immediately. Which to me says he's, the counter spells, at least pre-board, are so important. And a really loaded hand.
That was a big one. Actually, David scryed a Revelation to the top and then Jaced into it. I think I might have just used the eviction to get rid of Jacob's Jace and then drawn the Revelation so that it's protected from Thought Seizes or
we have seen one Thought Seize
this
out of Jacob already.
Yeah.
Either way, he's gonna get a Sphinx's Revelation off this one, and possibly an Ashiok to go with it.
Yes.
And here's where, at least pre-board, the matchup is pretty interesting because the players have a lot of dead cards. You can be in Jacob's situation and actually still lose a game.
Yeah.
I think post-board, it's very hard to be +6 lands and lose.
Yes, that is definitely the case. We saw Jacob split the Planeswalker versus the 2 Sphinx's Revelation. He's going to try and choke his mana and kill him fast.
Yeah, so David now has 2 Sphinx's Revelations. And Jacob's going to plus the Planeswalker again. So when it ultimates, there actually are not that many threats that he can get out of David's deck. Both of the Elspeths have been cast. He could take an Aetherling. It's
not
almost
that effective.
I mean, it's almost effective just because it gets it out of the deck.
Yeah, that is true.
But it's not effective at killing him, for sure.
Get their Aetherling and your Aetherling. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I suppose it's more important to get your Aetherling with it.
So, for a game that looked like Jacob had it in the bag, David's definitely doing some stuff here.
Now, Jacob still does have the third Sphinx's Revelation in his hand,
so many cards.
So many. He can burn through his cards as fast as he wants to. He does have a Dissolve and an Elspeth in play right now. He had placed 2 Thoughtseize in the main, so it's possible he's really trying to get maximum. Like why he's not running the Elspeth out. He's trying to just get all the cards, like every hard removal out of David's hand before playing something like Elspeth.
Because you're so threat light, you really need to protect the threat that you have.
Exactly.
It makes sense.
He's in Revelation for 7. And we'll see if Revelation is that he's been holding a Dissolve. We'll see if it's Revelation he wants to hold it for. No.
I would imagine so. Makes it pretty hard for David to play against you as Jacob.
David is deciding whether or not to fish for his own Dissolve. I don't think it's going to matter. He does not have a Dissolve, but he's going to try to fish for one. So in response, he's Revelationing for 3.
Well, Jacob does let resolve. It was only for 3. If David tapped out for 6, I think it would have gotten countered.
And so David goes up to 15, and now Jacob will draw
some
7.
Unbelievable amount.
So that was the last Revelation for Jacob.
I don't think he needs any more.
35. Yeah, he'd be worried about decking himself at this point. Now, is there a worry that if he draws the Aetherling, Jace can't cast it out of his deck? And then he has to play it the real way?
A small one, but like you said, he still does have a Thoughtseize to clear the way, and at least one more counter, right?
Yeah, and though that mass of cards right now is actually his hand.
Right.
So now he's going to play an Elspeth. He has 2, so that's the first one. It's going to resolve, makes 3 1/1s. Jacob almost certainly knows that this Elspeth's not here to stay.
Got his tokens, gonna move on.
And a discard of Supreme Verdict. Supreme Verdict. He's going to go ahead and hang on to... Let's see. Get rid of some Doom Blades. A lot of the dead cards here. Yeah, and this...
Little confusion here. Jacob Wilson said go to discard. David allowed it, but then is trying to
So the one thing, and I do this all the time, and I know this is something which I've noticed when I played, is something that confuses a lot of people. I say move to discard, and my opponent says okay, and then I put a card in the graveyard, and then they say end step. And I'm like, no.
We have passed that point.
Yes, if you say move to discard, it means that you're done.
Yes, you have passed priority through the end step. And it looks like that's what's going on here. David obviously wants to Hero's Demise the Elspeth on end step. But Jacob Wilson had already begun discarding cards.
Yeah, the idea is that you can't gain, once David gets to see the discards here, and that's extra information. So David has to make his decisions before he sees that extra information.
Right.
Because of that, I imagine they will not let it back up. Yeah, and they're gonna... Judge is being asked on it right now. Yeah, David does want to end step the Hero's Downfall.
Yep, looks like we're going to get an appeal to the head judge here. This situation comes up a fair amount.
Yeah, and I mean, it's hard. So as a player, you want to be clear, and say, like, I would like to discard. But you don't want to be like, I would like to discard, do you have any effects on my end step? Because at that point, you're pretty much coaching your opponent.
Yeah.
Which is why, you say move to discard or something.
Yep.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and go back to the booth while they're doing this judge call. Some reminders, we are in game 1 right now, Jacob Wilson versus David Cummins.
Long game 1.
Yeah, both players are 2-1 here. This is round 4 of the Standard Open. And they're playing an Esper Control Mirror.
And they've both sort of revved and...
Yeah. So one thing...
made land drops and countered stuff.
One thing that I've noticed is that, at least in the pre-board games, Jacob is just burning through his Sphinx's Revelations, and then he's doing stuff like casting Sphinx's Revelation on a 7-card hand, and then just discarding tons of cards.
Yeah. You have so many dead cards in your deck.
So right. So you like that in the matchup?
Yeah, like you have these Verdicts and Doomblades, and your 18th and 19th land and stuff. Like you have cards to discard, whereas that's not really the case post board, and you really need to sort of there are more answers to what you're doing, so you really need to like milk the value out of each individual card. But that's not necessarily the case in game one. I think it's more like you only have this small subset of cards that actually matter, so you just want to burn through your deck as fast as possible to get to the highest amount of those cards.
So is there any worry with where lands are concerned? The biggest thing I notice when I have like Revelations up to 14 cards is that I both want to play my lands, but I don't want to keep them in my hand,
Yeah.
It's like your lands go to the graveyard instead of the battlefield when you do that.
Right. It's usually like you keep 1 or 2 depending on, how many you have, how many you're going to need. Like if you already dwarf your opponent on board, like if you already have just,
If you already have, as in Jacob's situation, he's already up 5 lands.
Exactly. If you have this huge mana advantage, then it matters less. But if you're behind or equal, then you're going to have to sacrifice some more spells and get those land drops, because the game's going to continue and you're going to be on equal footing and you're going to need those land drops.
So pre-board, the mana advantage doesn't matter as much because the players don't actually have that much to do with it?
Correct.
There's not a giant counter where the counter war is basically, well, I have one of my dissolves, do you?
Yes.
And that's it?
Yes. And the subset of cards that actually matter are like those 2 counters, then all the things that kill the Planeswalkers and the Planeswalkers, and then Aetherling upstairs.
Yeah.
Aetherling's like the big one.
He's the big one. He's probably the hardest one to resolve though, right?
Yes. Well, that's pretty awesome. The thing about the Thoughtseize main is like the Thoughtseize is never really a bad card.
But it can hit an Aetherling.
But it is one of the few ways to hit an Aetherling, one of the few ways to protect your own Aetherling.
Okay. Yeah, I suppose if you hit a dissolve off a Thoughtseize, you have to feel like you feel really far
That's
ahead.
a big win, yes.
And you basically force them to counter your Thoughtseize in a way.
Right, instead of your Aetherling.
So because lands don't matter that much, does that mean, we saw that Cummins get down 5 lands, 6 lands to Jacob in this game. Does that matter as much?
Well, it matters insofar as like the Revelation battles.
He can't sculpt his hand as well.
Right, but Jacob's already burned through all of his, and David's he's at enough lands that he can, if he draws well off of them, he can still like chain them and get the cards that he needs. The mana advantage matters a lot more for when there's like syncopates going around.
So once again, games 2 and 3.
Yeah, when there's more counters where like you need to be able to rev for a significant amount, like 3 or 4, and have 2 counters up. And
and if one of those counters is syncopate, you have to leave up enough mana to make syncopate a counter.
Right, and that's not going to happen in this game one.
Right. So if David then naturally you said there's like 7 important cards.
Yeah.
David hasn't had the selection in this game that Jacob has, but if he draws the cards just naturally, those 7 cards, he's still on even parity, right?
Yeah, even though Jacob's up a million billion cards, since the scope of the cards that actually matter is so narrow, you can actually be on even footing with far less cards.
Yeah. So we saw the resolution there was that the Elspeth was allowed to stand, and now we are on David's turn. Looks like he's now going to main phase go ahead for the hero's downfall.
Yep.
Deciding between it and Detention Sphere right now. So he's going to go. The question is which one to downfall. He's going to first choose the Jace.
Yep.
Now, what we were talking before with the counterspells, remember that both of David's counterspells are dissolves, whereas Jacob's countersuite is 1 syncopate, 1 dissolve.
Yeah, and that's a lot harder, or at least it would be if you didn't have such an overwhelming mana advantage.
Yeah. So downfall, Jacob's has to be so judicious with his counterspells.
Yeah.
Would you rather have the Jace on 7 or have the Elspeth? And it's really close.
Yeah, it is. But then you have to think also about something like Aetherling or another bigger Revelation.
Yeah. It does look like Jacob has both his counterspells in his hand right now. And here he's going to use the first of them. He's going to go ahead and use that Syncopate. on the detention sphere that's heading towards Elspeth. He cannot leave up enough mana to dissolve back. So he couldn't have won the counter over there, but it didn't matter. David didn't have one of his dissolves.
And that's a pretty big win for Jacob, being able to use his Syncopate there effectively. Not having to hold up all of that mana every single turn.
Alright, so now Jacob does have a Planeswalker down, and David's searching for another answer. He finds Ashiok, land, Jace. He has a tough time because, Jace helps him find an answer to Elspeth, but Ashiok's one of his win cons, so he doesn't really... He has to make a pretty tough decision there. He takes the Ashiok.
I like it.
He already has a Jace, so I guess it's not as tough of a decision. Second Jace doesn't matter as much.
Right.
He's got to worry if he taps out that he's going to get Aetherlinge. Right?
Yes. Yeah, with Jacob drawing, over half of his deck at this point.
Ashiok immediately resolves. It's going to mill for 3. It hits Doomblade, Quicken, and a Temple. Didn't hit the Aetherling, didn't hit an Elspeth.
All right.
And remember, Jace minus tier, so those tokens can attack. And they will attack. You're going to go 1 at the Jace, 2 at David, which suggests that Jacob's going to kill the Ashiok this turn.
I would imagine so. And here it is. Detention Sphere.
With 1 white up, David can't have a response, so Jacob immediately slides it over to the side. And Jacob reforms the Planeswalker team.
Super Friends. And David does not look like he has the perfect configuration, which is just about what he would need at this point.
How sweet would it be if he still had the Merciless Eviction right now and got to choose Planeswalker?
Multiple Planeswalkers?
I've not seen that happen
I don't think
yet.
I've ever seen that either.
Like, well, I'll just exile both your Planeswalkers. That's good, right?
Yeah, that is sweet. I've seen Planar Cleansing do similar things.
That's fair. I've seen Planar Cleansing do it.
Yeah.
So we see Jace. He's going to go ahead and plus the Jace again. It's a way to defend from that Elspeth army. But the Hero's Downfall waits in the wings for Jacob. And that card selection he's had off those Revelations is really starting to push him ahead.
Yep. And now it is a 2-turn clock.
Right.
Jace still triggers even though it's dead. Make some more tokens.
Jacob pluses both his Planeswalkers, swings, and passes back. David's deciding whether or not to cast the away part of Far Away here.
Well, it looks like he might be revving.
He does have that second Revelation from that early Jace.
I don't think that this is the time to use it. I think you need to wait one more turn, right?
He's just going to go ahead and take out 2 tokens.
Yep.
So the only other use of that spell would be to buy a turn against a resolved Aetherling.
Correct.
Which is also an unappealing option. And David is not able to draw to that relevant part of his deck as fast, and is now facing down a pretty large army. And he's going to shock here. That only can mean one thing.
Yes. And here it comes for 6.
Jacob could not dissolve it faster.
And there we go.
All right, so game 1 to Jacob Wilson. I like, very well played from him.
Yeah, I liked
the way he sculpted that out.
Yeah, he was patient. He paced the game well. He sequenced well, and his thought seizes, his choice to play the thought seizes, came up in a big relevant way there.
Yeah. So of note, David did take 6 there on that turn where we saw the Jace in the graveyard, and people were saying, maybe that shouldn't have happened because of a Jace emblem. So with the trigger rules, because it's David's trigger, if David on his right pad, Jacob can't say take 6.
It's attack with my creatures.
If he says attack with my creatures, and if David writes -6 on his life pad,
then he missed the trigger.
Yeah. So I'm believing that's what happened there.
Okay.
David can also just say take 0, in which case Jacob would have to nod and say, okay, you take 0.
Yeah. Which is what I assumed happened, but... Ooh, there's a spicy one. Yeah. David Cummins sideboard.
So why don't we go ahead and start over there with David's side. Remember, David has more Planeswalkers in the main deck, And out of the board,
He also has, you know, the normal gainsays, 2 gainsays, 2 thought seizes, another detention sphere, blood barons if he wants those, and 2 negates. But the big one, the spicy one for me, is a 1 of Notion Thief.
Okay, so Notion Thief, one of those cards just designed for the Sphinx's Revelation Mirror. I have seen it in sideboards. I have never seen it steal a Sphinx's Revelation.
Oh, I have.
Okay, I mean, I have to imagine you just win when that happens.
Yes, it is a true delight. You don't get the life, but...
Okay, but it's okay, all right. You don't get the life points, but it's still a pretty good play.
Yes, it is quite strong. And, like, there aren't actually that many ways to kill a Notion Thief at instant speed. Like, you know, also in response to the same...
Do you Notion Thief an Azorius Charm if they've cast one, or do you just wait for the Revelation?
Ooh, that's a good question. You probably wait.
If you pause too long thinking about it in game, they'll know.
Yeah. They're like, is this guy really gonna negate my
no. Azorius Charm? That seems...
Yeah, I think that, you know, unless you're desperate for land drops or something, you save it for the big blowout.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that only works once, you know?
Right, but the one time it works, it really works.
Yeah.
So on Jacob's side, he doesn't have the gainsays, but he does have a number of cards that are good in the control mirror. He has 2 extra negates, an extra dissolve. He has 3 extra planeswalkers. So he has 2 Jace Memory Adept and 1 Elspeth. He has a Glare of Heresy, which I'm pretty sure comes in and builds up both Detention Spheres and Elspeth. He has another Thoughtseize and another Hero's Downfall, as well as a Pithing Needle. So there's like a whole suite of different 1 and 2-ofs that come in for the dead cards.
Yep, and that's what happens in these matchups, because there are so many dead cards main, your sideboard needs to have, you know, at least 8 cards that you can bring in. So you'll see cards that are sort of split off to have different applications in different matchups, but can still come in these matchups, like Glare.
So the question would be then how many cards, so David, it looks like in his sideboard, can sideboard 10 cards, for example. There's 5, like he has 5 cards that really don't work in this matchup. Jacob, it looks like he can sideboard 11 cards. You know, he has a Tidebinder, Yoke Docks. He has a couple cards that don't really work.
You don't like Yoke Docks?
I don't like Yoke Docks in the Esper Mirror.
All right.
So Jacob can sideboard 1 more card. Finding cards to sideboard out seems like it's very easy.
Yes. Yeah, the Doomblades and Supreme Verdicts.
And Azorius Charms, too.
Yes, pretty easy outs. Ooh, there's a Blind Obedience in David's deck, too. There's some tech we haven't seen in a while.
Yeah, Blind Obedience was initially used when the red-black aggro decks, the all-haste aggro decks, were really popular. That was about a year ago.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it much recently, mainly because there aren't too many haste creatures.
Yeah, Thundermaw Hellkite and Hellrider both rotated.
How do you feel about it in a control mirror? You have the potential to extort a lot off it.
Investing a card is so much, though.
I mean, I think I agree. We don't have things like Think Twice anymore, so I'm not sure you can get enough extorts off it.
Yeah, I can't say I'm a fan. I think it's more for like the dragons and Obsidats.
Say you get 10 extorts off it. Is that good?
Like you're insuring me, you're spotting me 10 extorts?
I will say that if you play this Blind Obedience, you will get 10 extorts over the course of the game.
Probably still no.
Okay, so if the answer is still no, then
it's a definite
no.
Okay, all right. Point made.
Right, now if I gave you 20 extorts, you'd probably take it.
I'd take that, yeah.
Okay. All right. Both are shuffling here. David's going to be on the play for game 2. We actually saw round 1 in the Esper Mirror. Cedric opted to draw in the mirror match.
Yeah, that was interesting.
What are your thoughts on that? You know, so there are some matchups where people do draw. Is this one of them?
It might be. I mean, we've talked so much about how versatile the answers are that the threats don't really matter until you reach super late game, where then it's, you know, Aetherlings and big Revelations. But the Jaces and Ashioks, you can deal with those pretty easily. So maybe the extra card, the extra land drop is more important.
Well, Jacob's gonna have 2 extra cards then because of the because David went to 6 and because Jacob was on the draw. Both players trade off temples at the beginning. I think put all the cards on top. So the temples have just been guild gates so far.
Yep.
We'll see if anyone decides to not keep a card.
Oh, thinking about this one.
Well, it's hard in Esper post-board because you want every card, don't you? I had a player ask me today who was playing Esper, he asked whether he should be playing Divination or Read the Bones. And, you know, my answer is just Divination because you kind of just, every card's good.
Yeah. Why spend 2 life, you know?
Yeah. both players have traded off land drops. At this point in the game, players, it's just like a challenge to see whether or not you can make the land drops, right?
Yes, make it to the mid game. That's the
Yeah.
goal. And it looks like a Jace is going to resolve. And I saw a Blood Baron of Escopa in David's hand.
And a really good Jace for David. He was short on lands. It's so interesting to the Jace when a Jace flips over 3 lands to say that that's a really good Jace.
Yeah. But land drops are good, especially in these matchups, especially for these decks.
All right, so the Jace hit for 2. Jacob looks like he's going to pull a trigger on a Hero's Downfall for it. He did let the Jace resolve, so David now back up to being only down 1 card.
And then didn't end step the heroes, right?
Did not end step the Hero's Downfall.
Maybe he drew it.
I believe he drew it for the
All
turn.
right.
And he's actually boarded in his Merciless Eviction as well, as we see there's one.
Well,
in
that is
Jacob's
one
hand.
answer to a Blood Baron of Escopa, which is what David Cummins plays.
All right, so Blood Baron has some answers. It's kind of a game of chicken. What is it? Because the Supreme Verdict's one of the best answers to it.
Yeah. But Supreme Verdict's quote should be coming out.
Right. So Jacob's going to respond with his own Jace Memory Adept. He pluses it to 5, mills David for 1. That'll put it out of range of the Blood Baron. And now we'll see where David's move is.
D-Sphere it. It's good to get that off the board as soon as possible.
Going to go with Detention Sphere, and now Blood Baron gets in for its first attack. David leaves up Gainsay. Jacob, though, not casting a blue spell, is going to go ahead for Elspeth. It's one of the few ways to kill Blood Baron in the deck, and Jacob has it.
Ooh, Notion Thief.
All right, so now we have the Notion Thief. Yeah,
It's coming.
I think we also have an Elspeth in David's hand, so we could see our first Elspeth roar.
All right, that's actually huge.
Well, what's interesting about this, okay, what I like is the tension this puts. Say the only answer players have are Detention Sphere, like, do you even cast it? Because it hits both Elspeths.
Ooh, I like that.
You can get this game of chicken, you know, how many, you want to keep them in play?
And you can't also, like, Detention Sphere their blockers because your attackers have the same name?
Yes, everything has the same name. But there's a good trump. Jacob's going to go make Aetherling while things are untapped. David did have to let down Gainsay to make that Elspeth. You just see this matchup's so different post-board. We see so many hard hitters.
Yeah.
David now draws another Blood Baron of Escopa. That's one way to, also another way to break up and open an Elspeth mirror.
Look at how many creatures there are.
There's way too
in
many
play and in their hands. This is not your daddy's control mirror.
Well, interestingly enough, if David had a spot removal spell, he could have killed the Aetherling there. He could have minused the Elspeth to kill it, and then when Jacob blinked it, killed it again in response. He did not have it, though.
His hand is full of Notion Thieves and Blood Barons.
Well, what he could have done is he could have cast the Jace and tried to dig for 1.
Yep, that would have worked.
But I think instead it looked like he's just going to go for the Blood Baron.
That would have been a cool thing if he did that and Jacob blinked the Aetherling in response.
In response to
the Jace activation?
To the Jace activation. That would have
been masterful.
Masterfully done.
Yeah. All right, so it looks like he is thinking about Jacing here.
I almost want to see if you Jace minus here, you do it before activating Elspeth.
Yeah. I agree, a little autopilot sequencing there. Maybe he's thinking about slamming Blood Baron.
Blood Baron, yeah. And I think with the line he took, I like the Blood Baron play a lot.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for David, Jacob does have Merciless Eviction in his hand right now, so he will be able to get all the creatures. He can unblockable the Aetherling, hit the Elspeth, phase it out. Well, not actually phase it out, blink it out.
Blink it, yeah.
And that's he's going to start on that line. He's going to go ahead and swing Aetherling at Elspeth.
He probably just killed the Elspeth and blink it out to block Blood Baron.
Yeah, so the fact that Jacob got that Aetherling down is so important right now.
Absolutely. And, you know, another land. Aetherling comes back. Pretty good game state for Jacob.
Question is, did David have any Pithing Needles in his sideboard? Does he have any way to interact with the Aetherling now that it's resolved?
It does not look like it, no.
So the Aetherling's around. He's there to stay.
Yes. That is an indefinite Aetherling.
And he's going to go ahead and Detention Sphere the Aetherling.
That will not work.
Well, what David's going to try to do is now basically go aggro. And he attacks the Bloodburn at the Elspeth, not at Jacob.
Alright.
Well, he needs to kill the Elspeth before the Elspeth can kill Bloodbaron, I suppose.
Makes sense.
But he's on a difficult line because that Aetherling is just going to continue to hit him.
And threaten to block the Blood Baron.
Right. Yeah, with as much mana as Jacob has, Aetherling's is a scary problem. Jacob doesn't have the land for this turn anymore, but he also has Merciless Eviction and Sphinx's Revelation.
It's a pretty good hand.
Among Detention Sphere, yeah.
So the plan is probably just attack with Aetherling and blink it out, threaten to block the Blood Baron until something changes.
Yeah, so basically he has to think about how he can lose this game right now.
Right.
And when you have, he has the Aetherling advantage.
All right, so he's going to
doing
Revelation.
nothing.
Yeah.
So how much mana do you leave up on the Revelation?
Probably just the blue.
Just one?
Yeah.
Okay.
There were a couple turns in there where if David had 2 removal spells, he could have taken out the Aetherling and didn't.
So David's going to shock here. He's going to cast Jace. Now we might. Are we going to see what I think we might see here?
What?
Well, there's a Notion Thief in David's hand. That's huge.
Where's that white card?
The Soldier of the Pantheon is boarded.
That is a strange choice.
I mean, in block, a lot of players in the Espermere just went on an aggro plan. I don't know if David has enough aggro to do that. He doesn't have Sin Collectors.
He only has 3 soldiers, no Precinct Captains or Sin Collectors. He does have a Notion
This is going to happen. This is going to happen.
Oh, no!
Okay, Sphinx's Revelation for 5 from Jacob. And Notion Thief comes into play for
Excuse
David.
me, sir. Blue Mage has fast effects. I will make a Notion Thief.
Because will it be enough? So Jacob gains 5, but David draws 5.
I'll steal your ideas. I'll steal the concepts in your brain.
Oh, wow. So the Notion Thief does hit. But is it going to be enough? Jacob still has the Aetherling. We're going to find... I mean, it certainly is not bad.
Yeah. He's not upset about it, but it's probably time to Aetherling Eviction, right?
All right. So, yeah, just a whole slew of things on the board for David now. He has... Jacob's going to have to clean up things eventually. He's going to lead out on a Thoughtseize, puts himself down to 17. And we see what was drawn. There's 2 Ashioks, 2 lands, a Soldier of the Pantheon, a Gainsay, and a Merciless Eviction. So still not many ways to interact with the Aether.
Yeah, I was gonna say after stealing a Rev for 5, that's actually a fairly unimpressive hand. I think that you just take the counter.
Mm-hmm.
And then what? Attack Jace.
Yeah, just take.
Unblockable attack Jace. Do you have enough mana to unblockable attack Jace, blink, Eviction?
If you don't have enough to do it, you need 8 mana to make that. You probably want to have another blue up.
Yeah.
So I think he may just let Jace be alive and do that play. Yeah, he's gonna go ahead and
Unblockable.
okay, so he's gonna kill the Jace.
You could just blink it out. Let him have a Notion Thief for a turn.
Yeah, let him attack for a turn. Yeah, so Aetherling still, because he has all this blue mana up, still stops Bloodbaron from attacking.
Yep.
Jacob's not under any... It's not under any eminent pressure, I guess. He can make most of the creatures trade.
Yep.
He would take 3 on an attack.
Just don't accidentally Sphinx's Revelation.
Yeah.
So now David has to figure out,
How does he deal with the... He has to... Basically, he has to resolve an Aetherling of his own very soon.
Yeah, that seems to be the only way. Or a huge Rev, which now he gets to choose between those 2. Jacob immediately identifies what matters.
Yeah, and it's the Aetherling, and my guess is that David still takes the Aetherling on this pile, though Thoughtseize is a pretty good card to have.
Thoughtseize in a Revelation's not bad.
That said, how bad is it to have Aetherling be the bottom card of your deck now?
Yeah, it's really hard to win.
can he afford to make? Can he afford to put it there? Like, can he still? Real question: can he still win if Aetherling's on the bottom of his deck? All his other ways to win are Planeswalkers, which are notoriously bad against an Aetherling.
Yeah, I would say that he's probably priced into taking this Aetherling here. I mean, I don't see another route to victory. Yeah, and he agrees.
He has no way to protect the Aetherling. So the question is, how many counters does Jacob have?
And we saw Jacob Thoughtseize a gainstay from David.
Ashiok resolves. It's going to go ahead and plus, taking out 3 cards. It was a downfall, a sphere, and a land. Jacob actually does not have any counter spells at the moment.
So we might be entering Aetherling land.
It looks like we're going to have an Aetherling on both sides of the board. Now, one question is whether or not Jacob cares about Ashiok.
It's a full turn of attacks worth of mana from your Aetherling.
Yeah. Jacob has drawn Archangel of Thune.
Surprised that's actually in his deck post-board. Just another dude.
Yeah, it's another dude. It's a card that David has to fight over, I guess.
Yeah.
It does a good job of attacking Planeswalkers, which is probably why he keeps it.
That is definitely true. And now we see Jacob assembling his mana, trying to figure out if he can kill the Ashiok and still Merciless Eviction.
It's going to be close here. I'm going to go ahead and unblockable the Aetherling, and we'll see whether it goes at the Walker or at David. It's going to, based on the pumps here, it's going at David. He knows that there's another Ashiok in David's hand.
Yeah, no real reason to kill the Ashiok. Just go to the dome.
Well, I like the play because I think Jacob has recognized that this is going to be an Aetherling race, so he just wants to be ahead.
Yep.
And he's going to Detention Sphere the Soldier. The Jace. Not a Soldier token, the Jace. He blinked out his Aetherling, it looks like.
Yep. Have to threaten to block the Blood Baron.
Teardrop from David. Remember, I don't believe Jacob has the counterspell for the Aetherling, so we might see an Aetherling war start here. David will need life gain to win the Aetherling war, though, as he's behind at the moment.
Yeah. If he can develop enough tempo gainers.
Mills for 3 more. Ashiok really a non-factor right now.
Yeah. This is actually a good illustration of how mediocre Ashiok can be in these situations. It's like all about Aetherling.
It does resolve. So both players now with an Aetherling in play. Jacob with more life points, but a very tenuous lead here. One revelation drawn by either player could swing the tempo of this game. And boom! Speaking of a revelation, we see one more Jacob Wilson.
So David does have some mana up. Jacob knows a good portion of his hand from a Thoughtseize. And doesn't want to give up a turn of attacking.
Well, Jacob doesn't need to change the race. You know,
unless the race
is changed. Yeah. He wins the status quo.
Yep.
Though what he's doing is tying up a lot of mana. It's tying up 6 mana a turn to continue to do A tier.
Get some organization on this board here. Looks like an unblockable Aetherling is going to be dealing 8 damage to David. Knocking him down to 7. Blink and pass.
Alright.
So now David has to come up with some sort of tempo gainer.
He drew a dissolve.
He can't even suicide the Blood Baron to gain life because Jacob can just block and blink before lifelink.
Exactly, and that's why Jacob's been doing that every time.
Yep. So
also because he doesn't want to take the damage himself.
Right. So now the question is, does David have a way?
One thing that David could do is if he attacks here for the full 8 and just dumps more creatures on the battlefield, like the Soldier of the Pantheon, I believe he'll have enough damage to go lethal next turn, and he may be able to pull off a small Sphinx's Revelation to stay alive and make it to that turn. So remember, right now it looks like he has Jacob on a 3-turn clock, but Notion Thief and Soldier of the Pantheon could push an extra 2 damage through. He'd need yet another creature to actually take a turn off the clock, but it's close. Also, if Soldier of the Pantheon is played, then Jacob can't play 2 gold spells, because if he does, that'll actually buy another turn for David.
All right, so this is the key point. If Jacob blinks out, I think he wins, and he does blink out.
All right, so Jacob drops down to 9. Remember, there is a Sphinx's Revelation, and he can Revelation for 3.
David? No, he's
doesn't
got
he
a
have-
Merciless Eviction.
Oh, it was a Merciless, so
Yeah.
he doesn't have the Revelation.
No, he needed that life from the Blood Baron, but Jacob correctly identified that, denied it, and is representing lethal.
Yeah, I don't think he has a way out of it then. You'll see
I
though.
have an Elite Vanguard. Is that good enough?
Yeah. So yeah, he has putting in the 2/1. I guess on turn 1 that guy could do a lot. If he draws one on turn 1, he could probably deal up to 8 damage with it.
Yeah. to what end?
It would be a turn right now, I suppose. Alright, so he makes Soldier of the Pantheon with 5 mana up. He goes ahead and passes. Does not at the moment have a kill spell for the Aetherling attack.
Nope. And he's just trying to posture a little, try and get Jacob maybe to not tap as low, not go for the kill.
Alright, Jacob's make lethal, and that'll do it. So Jacob Wilson, 2 games to 0, defeats David Cummins, moves up to 3-1.
A couple of cool things in play in that match. One, I would say, is Ashiok is super underwhelming.
Yeah, we saw Jacob attack when he had the Aethling down, he attacked every Planeswalker David cast except for Ashiok. He just ignored it.
Yeah. I would say that the Soldier Pantheon plan isn't a thing. I think Blood Baron's fine, but not great.
Well,